we're going to talk equity crowdfunding with Anna Guenther from Pledgeme.
Woohoo!
What the fuck is equity crowdfunding?
It's crowdfunding, but instead of offering rewards, you offer shares in your company. And the reason this is cool is because historically, if you wanted to go out to the public and offer shares of your company, you had to be big. You had to be a listed company. You had to go through that whole process. But now early stage companies can go out and offer shares.
Beautiful. So it's like a mini stock market?
No.
Okay.
Because the stock market implies there's liquidity. So liquidity being you can easily buy and sell shares. It is a stock market in that you can go out to the public and raise, but it doesn't have that second bit, which is the market bit, right?
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. That makes sense. So there's lots of different types of crowdfunding, and people typically think of like Kickstarter.
Yeah.
How is equity crowdfunding different?
Yeah, well, it is that thing. So, it is you go out to your crowdfunding, but instead of offering rewards to give a value exchange, you're offering ownership in your company. And so the relationship is longer term, right? A rewards-based crowdfunding campaign, hopefully it's done in 6 months. You raise the money, you deliver the thing. You have a crowd that loves you, but that's a relationship. Equity crowdfunding, they own shares in your company, which could be for the long term, right?
So does it suit everybody?
I mean, technically it could.
Okay.
I think the thing that we say, though, is that it's best for companies that have founders that have crowds, like people that they want to communicate with, they have a crowd, and they're really clear about how the money's going to help them grow.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not all companies want to grow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So probably wouldn't work for them. It's harder, I find, for companies that don't have the ability to communicate effectively, which not all companies need to do, right? Like as long as they can sell to that one buyer, if that's what they do. But yeah, anyone could do it, but it might not work for everyone.
Yeah. You talk about crowd a lot, and this isn't actually a question we've written down, but I think it follows. What is a crowd? How many is a crowd? Because Atik didn't have any. We didn't have much.
I think the thing is everyone has a crowd. And so people often come to us and like, oh no, we're just starting. We don't really have that many customers yet. And it's like, yeah, but you still have the people that have supported you get to this point. You have your family, you have your friends, you have advisors, you have networks that you've got around you. That's your crowd. Your crowd can also be customers. And I don't know, like I remember with you in your first campaign, there were a lot of people that invested that were your customers.
Yeah, there was a lot that I didn't know were there. So I think the key is you may have a crowd, you just don't know it.
Yeah, Amanda Palmer says it really interestingly where she's a musician who's crowdfunded really effectively a few times. She talks about it as it's almost like a farming analogy, like you've sown the seeds over years and crowdfunding is when you have to harvest that. Like you might not even realize how many seeds there are or how much you've grown until you do that harvest. Yeah, everyone has a community. Everyone has a crowd.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, can you communicate with them? And do they want what you're doing, Yeah. So it's really making sure there's a value exchange. And I think you did a really great job with the value exchange, right? Like it was not only discount on your product, but also shares in a company that, you had a really clear plan to grow.
Yeah, that's a good point because sometimes, and in fact most cases, a lot of equity crowdfunders also offer a reward at certain tiers for shareholding.
Yeah.
So if I remember, we'll talk about this in a subsequent video, if I recall, we offered a discount on 5,000 underneath, and then anything over $5,000 we offered them a bit more. I don't remember the details anymore.
We can
Long time ago.
We can open it up. We can look at your IM.
This is very true.
I do actually go back and look at it quite regularly.
I tell people to go and look at it all the time.
Yeah.
It's such a useful resource. So head over to pledgeme.co.nz and have a look at Sorbet/Atik's first and second round because it'll be useful.
Yeah. I love that that sort of stuff is still public, right? Like you can go back and see how someone did it because it's often people never tell you how they raised or what they raised or what the valuation was.
Secret when they talk about their seed round and their Series A, and nobody knows what that means. That's definitely going in the deeper.
Yes, the language that we use makes it exclusive, right? But also the fact that it's not transparent makes it exclusive. To the point where I was at a conference recently and I was trying to share stories of people who've raised, and I went to a friend and I was like, "Hey, can I share your story?" And she's like, "Totally." And I was like, "Cool, can you just tell me a bit more?" And she was telling me all the stuff like valuation and all that, and she's like, "Oh wait, I should ask my co-founder if this is okay." And she went to her co-founder and he's like, "Oh, actually, no, the investors don't want us sharing that information."
Yeah.
Which I get, but I also don't get, right? Like, it's just that sort of...
Since I did that, there's a lot of things I used to share that now rather I didn't. Just from a competitive other investors getting a benchmark if we were sitting type thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't know, I just default transparent, right? Because I'm sort of like, it's not the numbers that matters, it's the delivery and it's the drive.
I would agree. But I think we are unusual. What do you have to do a crowdfunding round? I think this is the bit that people get stuck at, right? It's a terrifying big process. What the hell do they do? Particularly with Pledgeme.
Yeah, so I think the thing is, if you're going out and doing a raise from anyone, you need to have a really clear plan, right? Of what you're going to do with money, what the opportunity is, all that sort of business planning. So there's something called an IM, which you write for your raise. And then you also need to figure out how you're going to communicate that out to the world. So there's the IM and the comms plan. Those are the two core documents. Yeah, and then you do it, right? Like you communicate out to your crowd, you share your IM, you do all of that. And we help with that because there's some things you need to think about around not being specifically false and misleading. So the language that you use is really important. And in business, I think we've been taught to like sell a big dream and make big promises. But when you're raising investment, you shouldn't do that.
No, you have to be incredibly down the line and conservative about it.
Conservative, yes, but also just don't promise things because you don't know what's going to happen. So just being really clear about your aims and your goals, but not saying we will, stuff like that. But really, it's those two main documents. It's your comms plan, so you're communicating it out, and it's your IM.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a legal process? Or is there a big drawn out DD process? I think that's what people sometimes have a fear of, because certainly there is a little bit more of that with angels, or if you go further up the investment food chain. What do you have to do to jump through those hoops?
Yeah, so I think the thing is you've done all that work to launch the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
You provided all the information, you've included some financial information, all of that you normally do through a DD process. So really, once it's out there, people can ask you questions, but you're not going out and creating lots more documents or doing a lot more work. So that's sometimes why it's a bit scary, because you're front loading the work to get it ready to launch into the world, because after that it's not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you went to an angel or went through another process, my understanding, I've never actually done those processes, is that's when you start delivering information, right? You do the pitch, they're interested, and then you give them more.
Mm-hmm.
With crowdfunding, you just give them more at the start.
Cool. And there's not anything, I mean, I personally recommend people have their forecasts and financials vetted independently. I know people have in-house accountants. It gives you that layer of independent analysis. You don't have to, it's just what I did.
I think it's really important to have conversations about your numbers with financial people.
Mm-hmm.
What we find is that often financial people are very risk averse and don't want to put their names to stuff.
Definitely.
So like if you wanted them to put their name to it, it would cost thousands of dollars, if not more. So yeah, definitely get your accountants on board and have conversations and get clear on your numbers. But we don't often see people go through a full process where it's like fully reviewed or approved.
Gotcha. And that doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. No.
So if you can't afford accounting or lawyers to that degree, beyond the initial discussion and making sure everything is okay, that doesn't matter.
No.
How much does it cost? Does it cost shitloads to run an equity crowdfunding campaign?
So we often get asked this, and it's really hard to respond because it depends on who you have in your team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have comms people that can support you, or a filmmaker that's a friend, like it can be really cheap to launch a campaign. If you don't have those networks, you might want to pay for that stuff. And so that's where it can start getting expensive depending on who you use.
Mm-hmm.
But we've seen people launch a campaign for $0, and we've seen people spend 20, 30K getting ready. How much did you spend? Do you remember?
Videographer was $4,000. We probably paid $2,000 across lawyers and accountants, which was a lot to us at the time, but it really isn't. I think that was it.
Yeah. Sometimes people pay, for lawyers and accountants. I do think it is good to have a lawyer in your business, right? Just to give you that soundboard and advice. What we have found is there's some lawyers that are really supportive of crowdfunding and some that are just like, why would you do that?
Yep.
Or don't even know what crowdfunding is, still, to this day.
Okay.
Yeah.
I used to ask at every presentation who knew what crowdfunding was for the last, 5 years, and the number of hands now is infinitely higher.
Yeah.
Which is about time.
It's totally.
But I have also had bankers say, it's a very immature way of raising money.
I think it's so interesting because there's this sort of perspective that people are dumb. And, that like, if you crowdfund, that's dumb money. And it's like, how do you know? Like,
That makes people think in VCs and PE funds know what they're doing. Just saying.
I know. But it's also like, just because you have invested before or you're in the business of investment doesn't mean you're smarter. It means you might have some different questions that you'd ask. But you also don't know who's investing. There could be people in that crowd that are investors, like
usually
experienced investors.
Yeah. Do investors pay anything?
No. Okay. Investors don't pay anything, obviously, than investing in the campaign. There are fees if they want to use a credit card that they pay, not the company, so don't want the campaigner to have to cover someone's transaction fees.
But you can pay via direct debit and no problem.
And then it's free. But no, there's no fees for investors. The fee for the campaigner is 5% if you do a rewards-based campaign, 7.5% of its equity, because there's additional costs for all of the stupid anti-money laundering requirements. I think the only one winning in all of this legislation are the companies providing these services.
Yeah.
Anti-money laundering.
So what do they have to do for anti-money laundering? Is that a concern for people?
No. Basically, what it means is that we have to verify the identity and the address of everyone who pledges to an equity campaign.
Yeah.
And the reasoning for that is so people don't money launder, which I think it would be the stupidest way to try to launder money is investing in an early stage company where there is limited
intriguing choice.
Ability to get that money back out again. But yeah, we're required to do that.
How did he do it on Breaking Bad? Laundromat.
Yeah. Whitewear is a good way to go, supposedly.
There's a lot of stores and malls that never have anybody in them, I think. What are you a front for?
Yeah. One of our directors used to be a police officer and a hostage negotiator.
Wow.
Very cool claim to fame. But yeah, he does sometimes talk about the best ways. Not that we are going to launder money, but just to know. Like,
it's important to know these things just
how
in case
other people would do
really
it. How do they do it?
That's now twice. It is 10:30 in the morning and it is now twice I've talked about money laundering with two different people.
Okay.
Which is interesting. I swear to God, not laundering money.
It's the day today.
Yeah, I would have some horses if I was laundering money. What are some effective marketing strategies? Okay. I think the big thing for me was that I was terrified that I'd launched this thing and everyone would be like, well, great, but I'm not investing in the company I've ever heard of. But also, mainly, I was worried no one would have heard of it. It turned out that fear was somewhat pointless. But how do people get the name out?
So that they would have heard of you. You were scared to
out of the crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm interested in hearing your story around how you did it. I think that's the next video. But basically what we talk people through is, this is like marketing anything. So you need to think about your comms plan, how you're going to communicate it, what the assets are, all of that. But break it down actually to a list of your first 50. Who are the 50 people that you think are going to be stoked about this campaign and want to support or invest in it? And talk to them. And just start building that sort of momentum around the people that you already know. So then it gets spread further. And it gets spread further if you have a really clear goal of what you're raising the money for and how it's going to grow your company, right? And if you do it in an interesting way, do it your way, show your personality. So for example, when Yeasty Boys went out to raise, instead of doing a normal pitch video where, you talk to camera and tell people about your growth plans, they did an animation, which was the Queen chugging a beer in a G-string because they were launching it to the UK. And it went down so well with their crowd. It offended so many old women. And when I told Stu that, though, I was like, hey, dude, your videos offended some people down in Dunedin when I showed it in the presentation. He's like, cool, that's my filter. I only want people to invest in my company to get me. And that is our sense of humor. So, fine.
That is what I keep telling people. Who you are not for is just as important as who you are for. And you don't want sales, you don't want customers, and you don't want investment from everybody.
No.
Because they won't get, you don't.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is market it your way. Share your story your way. And if you share it well, and if you have a cool idea, a cool plan, it'll resonate. And we often get people being like, oh, we're too scared to even, go out there and try. And it's just just start talking to people. If they don't like it, either they won't engage or they'll tell you. Hopefully they'll tell you, right? And if they do like it, they'll get excited. And if they're excited, that's when you should do it.
So after, you've raised it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, everyone's excited, it's the warm, rosy glow afterwards. What happens immediately after the campaign closes? So you've hit your minimum, you may or may not have hit your maximum. What happens then? And to be clear, a minimum and a maximum, you set 2 goals for your campaign. Your minimum is what you must achieve for the campaign to go through and for you to get any money at all. Your maximum is the goals that you can go and do more stuff, but it's not mission critical for you to raise. Is that the way to describe it?
Totally. Yeah. And the minimum, you need that because you want to do the thing. The maximum is typically you don't want to sell too much of your company. So that's the maximum you're willing to take in that round. And so what happens after the campaign closes is the platform gets busy verifying all the identities, processing all the money, and then they send through a list to the company saying, hey, here are all your new shareholders. You need to pass a resolution to issue those shares. You need to update your share register, update the company's office, and then we'll send you through the funds minus our fees. And so that's the process. And then once you have those new shareholders and that money, you just get going. You do the thing that you said you wanted to do, and hopefully you nail it. And over time, you should be communicating with those investors. There's a legal requirement, right, once a year to do an annual report. And the structure of that is set out in the legislation.
An AGM?
AGM and annual report.
Yeah.
And then people do communicate a bit more often sometimes with their crowd because they want them to know what they're up to. They want them to help with.
Well, you've got a big group of cheerleaders. Why wouldn't you talk to them?
Why wouldn't you?
I wasn't very good at this because I was too busy doing everything that I sort of got wrapped up in. But I would recommend people do it more often.
Yeah, I think you don't want to like over communicate with them, right? But like there is
Every week is a
something.
bit much.
Yeah, but there is something in them knowing what you're up to and feeling that sense of pride and supporting the company, or even if things are going tough, like knowing that they could help, right? Like what is it that you need? And I think that's the thing is like. It is risky investing in a company at this stage, so you might go through hard times. So why not have that crowd?
Go through hard times.
Yeah.
It's gonna suck.
It's horrible, right? Like the sucky bits and the great bits often happen in like the same week.
Oh, totally. And then the difference between the high and low, the wavelength, right, is breathtaking.
Yeah.
Now, this question, my last question for you, is not on that list, but it's one that a lot of people come to me with, which is how the fuck do you manage your shareholders, and will having an equity crowdfunding campaign in your history preclude you from a VC or a PE deal? I know what my answer is.
Yeah, so I think the management is, just communicate with them. You're required to once a year. You can do that through a MailChimp or a newsletter. Like it doesn't need to be fancy software, right? You can have a newsletter and you can manage your share register in a Google spreadsheet. Like
That's all we did.
It's all you need. You don't need to get fancy on it. Whether it will affect your ability to raise in the future really depends on that investor that you're raising from in the fucher, right? If you do raise from any other investors. Typically it's non-voting shares, so it should be easier to pass any resolutions that you need. But the beautiful thing about crowdfunding, at least in my mind, is it's like the perfect example of product market fit. Like people want the thing that you're doing and they want it so much they've invested in it. So you would hope that later investors would be like, oh man, that's amazing. They've managed to get this whole community around them that own a piece of them and are out there selling it because they love it.
Exactly. I don't know why we don't look at it from that positive frame of mind. Not these people didn't just buy your product, they bought into your company. There's community building on next level.
Yeah.
I don't understand why people are so worried about that. And I'm actually going to make you film this portrait as well because I'm putting it on social media.
Yeah.
It is something that I hear a lot. And I feel like there is almost people out there going around saying, oh, you shouldn't use equity crowdfunding because it will stop you from raising later.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's people who have, what's the word?
Vested interests.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Vested interest in you not doing equity crowdfunding. And I know that sounds super conspiracy theory, but some places would prefer that you got money from them, not for equity crowdfunding, right?
Yeah,
That's
totally.
the thing I've totally seen.
Totally. And I mean, I think you're a great example of it being fine. You can do things
We
in
have
other ways
352
later.
shareholders.
Yeah.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
And I mean, we've had a company recently that has gone through the process of selling and it was fine. We also had another company, a few companies actually, who went later and listed.
Cool.
And actually having a crowd was a good thing because they had some of the spread that they needed to be able to go and list. So, yeah.
By listing, you mean on the stock market?
On the stock exchange, yeah. Yeah. So both here in New Zealand and also in Australia, we've had that happen as well. And so, it is definitely possible to continue growing your company. I think there are going to be some investors who will look down on it. And I mean, that's an interesting conversation, right? Like, if you wanted your crowd involved in your company, are they the right people to be investing in your company later, right? Like, it just feels like a values mismatch. I think that's a thing though, like, only do crowdfunding if you want a crowd in your company. Like, I think that there's people who think it's maybe the easy way to raise or, that don't really care about that crowd component. And I don't know if that's for them then, right? Like,
yeah, your motivation's important.
Yeah.
I think a whole bunch of things. To me, equity crowdfunding did look like the less scary, not easier, less scary choice.
Interesting. Why?
I suppose because back then I didn't know any VCs or any real angels. I didn't really know any angels. As opposed to the devil. And I just assumed they would be terrifying and obsessed with profit at all costs. And I had all these preconceived notions that were wrong a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So equity crowdfunding, because they were people I knew, they were customers, they were friends, they were family, they were whatever, just seemed much less intimidating.
Yeah.
Not necessarily true.
Yeah. One of the things I want to ask you about, and I don't know if it's in this video or the next one, is like, for you, what were the benefits of crowdfunding apart from the money? Like, were there any things that you saw as being...
Marketing. I will definitely talk about it in the next one.
Yeah.
I did equity crowdfunding for multiple reasons. Money, obviously, but marketing was the other. I'll talk about it more in the subsequent video. There's another one. Go and read that. Go and watch that. And so with my new startup, Incredibles, we don't need the money for a while. We will definitely be doing equity crowdfunding, pure marketing purposes.
Marketing.
Building the community and having people feel really vested in a company that helped us build.
And I think the thing is, like, that's marketing, but it's almost more than that, right? It's engagement, it's community, it's people that care about the success of it. And for me, that's the benefit that I see. So not only have we supported heaps of companies to crowdfund, we've equity crowdfunded ourselves a few times. And, you know, there are people in there that have skills and experiences that are super useful, but also places to stay when you're traveling the country.
True.
Or like, you know, like there's just all these things that it's really hard to grow a company. And if you have a lot of people backing you and supporting you in different ways, in some ways it is easier. So there's, lots of different benefits. But I think the thing that I'm realizing is you have to want that crowd. Like, and if you don't want that crowd, then there's
if
other
you
ways
want
to raise.
quiet money for someone to shut up and go in the corner, it's not for you. Would that be another? Not that they're loud, but your crowd should be something you utilise.
Yeah, totally.
Not that they're there in your face, but if you just want to be left alone and build something in stealth mode, but not stealth mode, then maybe it's not the right one.
But I wonder if there's any money that's quiet money, right? Like,
I wouldn't have thought so.
even in like, I don't know. I was going to say even the banks, you know, they want to be repaid, right? So they're not quiet if they're not getting what they want.
Loudest.
Yeah.
And they definitely want the most info. And your house, and preferably your firstborn.
Yeah, firstborn, legal approval in multiple ways. Yeah.
Exactly.
No.
You don't like banks either, do you? So she's getting off on the right foot.